So, in the last 2 days, I've talked about why I contemplated suicide and what ultimately saved my life, or rather, who saved my life. So, in a way, here's the thing: every time I do this series of videos, there's always something I'm missing, or I forget to say, or I don't word it correctly, at the moment of truth, let's say. In fact, I can tell you right now on Wednesday there was something I forgot to say, but I'll get to that when I get to that. So, in a way, this is sort of a bit of a cleanup, as well as a chance to reflect on anything that, because, I probably made it sound as if, my entire life up until this point, up until, August of 2021, was nothing short of completely miserable, and that's not true. But again, I'll get to that as, time goes on. Because if nothing else, one of the things that, helped me get through life in general was just all of the people that I knew. And when it came to high school, I mentioned this the other day, but choir really was, it was a safe space before the term safe space became mainstream, if that makes sense. Don't get me wrong, everybody could joke around during choir and stuff, absolutely. But it never got, so bad that the jokes went too far, or, nothing was ever really said that made me feel uncomfortable. So, again, at the end of the day, that's just one example of, meeting so many people. And that's actually one thing that I don't think I could ever really express enough. Especially back when I was a trainee Pauling. In the course of my life, I've met some extraordinary people. For sure. Our head prefect wound up playing Division I football at Stanford. Another person wound up playing for Boston College. One of my brothers is, I think he's still playing professional lacrosse. I know he is a champion for, I forget what team he was on when he won it. These are pretty, again, extraordinary people. And I still keep in touch with some of them every now and again. For sure, there's been one of them I definitely consider one of my best friends, and he really has shown a lot of support over the years. And before I get into, before I continue to talk about the support he's given me, I also need to stress about how, how do I put this? Again, I'm trying to make sure that I cover all the angles here. Before August of 2021, even at my most, let's say, confident, I never really felt like I deserved anything, or, I always felt worthless, let's say. And I mentioned how on Wednesday, when I got my proper diagnosis, it really felt as if a weight was lifted off of my shoulders. Because I mean, for one thing, it affirmed that, I was right all along and how I never belonged on the spectrum to begin with. And the reason why it was so liberating for me was, well, again, partly because, there was a lack of, like, self-worth. There was a belief that this is going to follow me everywhere I go, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the only one who really believed that I never belonged on that autism spectrum was myself. I mean, not even my own parents really, believed it. Or believed in me in that regard. Which is why it's so conflicting for me when I mention that when you're told something for like 30 years, that's complete bullshit, it really is hard to let it go. Especially when your parents are one of the instigators of it. I mean, between that and the help I would get in 2018 regarding my weight issues, there was a legit almost 5-year period of time when I would actively not tell my parents that I love them. And not to mention, like, as I get older, obviously more and more people sadly pass on. And some of these people include the parents of, friends that I have. It's very sad and very devastating. And, obviously, as inevitable as death is in life, I don't wish that upon anyone. But the one thing that's always a constant is, if I could see you one more time, or see this person one more time, tell them that, I love them and stuff. I can tell you for a fact that no one's going to feel more guilty about that when, their parents die than I will. Because again, I spent, almost 5 years on and off, I say on and off, basically around, because it was around my sophomore year of high school when I really openly confessed how much I just straight up hated my mom and dad for putting me in special ed. I mean, again, I figured out what the problem was early on when I was in college, but it wasn't until summer after my sophomore year that I told them about how I felt about it. And it wasn't pretty. Trust me, when my parents die, I'm going to feel horrible about it. Because people say that, I could have told my parents I love them more. Trust me, no one's going to feel that more than me. And trust me, I am going to feel awful about it. And I also have to stress, why, I came to the conclusion back when we saw I Am Sam in health class that, this autism spectrum bullshit is going to follow me wherever it is I go. And, there's nothing I can do about it, so I should, just forget it and kill myself. It wasn't like that. It was more the fact that, between the fact that I was already in special ed and that moment, and even sometime after, how do I put this? That whenever you feel angry or sad or, depressed, let's say, feeling better really can be as simple as, reading a good book if you're into that, watching a good movie or TV show, listening to some good music, having a good snack maybe. Something that's going to make you feel better and take your mind off whatever ails you, and so you can move on from it. Not one thing would work for me in terms of making me feel better. I really could have been watching, say, one of my favorite shows on TV at the time, and it would make me smile, and I would acknowledge I'm having fun doing this experience, watching the show, but it immediately went away whenever I thought of just what my life is like. And granted, sometimes, that sort of, I guess, feeling of happy emotion, let's say, lasted longer than others. I mean, sometimes it lasts all the way until, let's say, the show was over, and then I immediately felt sad again because of the way my life is. And I always really hated my mom's excuse, too, of, God, is responsible for, making me the way I am. Look, I do believe in God. I do believe the Lord works in mysterious ways. But keep God out of this when it comes to, God, made you like that the way you are. Because I get the fact we're made in our own image, but more often than not, it really is the people involved with your creation that sort of defines everything. That part is definitely genetic, through and through. I mean, again, no one in my family is on the spectrum, and obviously now neither am I. But, whenever I hear, God made you that way, or God made me that way, keep him out of this. That's just my personal take on it. Because when you do that, you make someone question one's own religion. And I really don't. And keep in mind, back when I was a kid, I really was not the most religious person. I can make a case I'm not a very religious person now, considering the fact the last 2 weekends I've gone to church twice, one on Saturday and once on Sunday. My point is, I at least had enough faith where, again, I do believe in God. I grew up Catholic, so yeah, I believe in God. I do believe the Lord works in mysterious ways. That's just how I am. If anything, God made me into, again, someone who believes in God and, believes that he moves in mysterious ways. I know it sounds kind of silly, the fact I said that God made me believe in God. I know it sounds kind of silly, but you get the idea. And that's like another thing too. Whenever when I got to college, I came to that realization that, putting me in special education was wrong, and, it was my mom and my dad, who put me in there. Honestly, I came to the conclusion just simply because, I did kind of notice this a little bit when I was at Trinity Pauling, but I really noticed it when I was in college, when, everyone just seems so nice and friendly. I don't really have much of a reason to feel upset anymore. For once, it really does feel as if, my mind is taken off of, that feelings of, the feelings of inadequacy and, worthlessness regarding me being on the spectrum. And so I'm like, wait, if all these people are so nice, where was any of this? Like, where is the disconnect? And that's when it hit me. There's no special ed at Gettysburg College. There's no special ed at Trinity Polling. There's special ed at Horseheads though, and that's where the disconnect is. And then I just became bitter and spiteful. And I mean, I guess in a way, like that experience was my first true test regarding, regarding the decision I made to not commit suicide. Because if I committed suicide, I never would have came to that realization on my own. Granted, it's probably not, the smart realization. But again, it doesn't happen if I kill myself. So, kind of a bit of a give and take there. Honestly, I think the most beautiful thing about getting my proper diagnosis in August of 2021, and I mentioned this, how it felt as if a weight was lifted off my shoulders. It felt like I could breathe again. And yeah, up until I realized everything that happened to me up to that point didn't need to happen at all, it was the first time that I not only could feel happy again, but I was allowed to, be happy. Feel that true emotion of happiness that we all seek to have in life. And again, I was angry about everything that happened up to that point, but it didn't matter because, again, I was allowed to feel angry about this, and it would be okay. I was allowed to be happy about what's really wrong with me, which sounds kind of oxymoronic, but you get my point. I could feel this way, and it was beautiful. However, I think my first real test of, being allowed to feel stronger emotions, a stronger version of happy, or a stronger version of, sadness, let's say. For sure, it came in the form of the heartbreak I just went through. Actually, who am I kidding? It's something I'm still going through in a way. Because obviously I was over the moon when I felt happy again for the first time in probably my entire life. It just made feeling sad all the worse when experiencing heartbreak the way I did. For those of you who don't know, there was a girl I knew way back from my St. Mary Mother days. And whether I realized it or not, I really did like her. And my mom, believe it or not, suggested the idea that, I should date her. Which, I'm just going to spoil this right now. That's the one good idea my mom's ever had. And, of course, because it's a good idea, she had to change her mind. I know some of you are thinking, well, what about Trinity Polling? Yes, she did technically mention Trinity Polling, but the decision to go was my choice. And honestly, it's the best decision I ever made outside of, not committing suicide, of course. And the problem with me seeing this girl I liked was simply the fact, I was never where she was. What I mean is, because, her family is Catholic too. They would go to church in, the Horseheads area on the weekends. Meanwhile, because my father and my mother know everyone in Corning, we go to church in Corning, which would eventually lead me to a rather powerful dislike of the city of Corning as a whole, because remember, I didn't like going to church. So, You go to Corning for a church, you therefore associate that hatred with the city of Corning. By the way, I want to make one thing clear. I don't hate the city of Corning, but if I'm choosing between Elmira and Horseheads or Corning, I'm choosing Elmira and Horseheads, hands down. So, but again, that's just, my opinion on that. It wasn't until I started actually living in this apartment that I saw this girl again. I was able to talk to her. And it was great. In fact, when my twin nephews were first born, I actually wasn't allowed to say anything about them being born yet. Obviously you gotta wait a little bit before you can. It was quite literally not even 24 hours that I told this girl that I became an uncle. This girl I liked for so long, was the first person I told that I became an uncle. And again, I didn't start living here until, September. So the holiday season's coming up. I actually made this girl not one, but 2 jars of homemade hot cocoa mix. But I think the most powerful thing about what was going on came when my grandfather died. Because this girl comforted me. Like, she actually made me feel a little bit better. Which is why, when I was going to finally ask her out, that's when the pandemic started. Before I get into why the pandemic was so horrible in that regard, I need to go back to 2019. This was a few months after I got help for my weight issues. I was incredibly skinny, by the way. Deathly skinny, in fact. However, I refuse to believe it. In fact, a part of me still refuses to believe it. And therefore, I refuse to believe I needed help. I mentioned the other day that, my brother can be cool when he wants to be, but he really is insensitive, and it really is due to arrogance. It was literally the day of the Super Bowl. This would have been when it was actually Tom Brady's last Super Bowl as a Patriot, where he beat the Rams. Ironically, his first Super Bowl, he beat the Rams. So, anyway. We're in the kitchen at my folks' place. And keep in mind, I am still royally pissed off at my entire family for sending me away to get help. Because again, at that time, and again, even now, I never believed it. I mentioned something that happened prior to me going. And my brother had the audacity to jokingly, and when I say jokingly, I mean he laughed like ha 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 ha, he said, "Was that when you almost died?" Look, even if I were to believe in the fact I needed help, even if I believed that I was going to die if I didn't get help, and trust me, I didn't, and I still don't. You don't say that to anyone who's been in treatment. That's literally the most insensitive thing you could ever say. So naturally, I did the one thing I really should have done for years now, and I told him off. And by which I mean, I tell him off, my brother is a giant wuss, and so rather than taking what I said like a man, he doesn't want to speak to me anymore. Granted, the things I said were pretty harsh. How he's the favorite child. How put you in special ed and see how far you get in life, because you don't have what you have if you do. The fact that I'm not the only person who's ever legit called him out for being a wuss, whether I said it indirectly or not. Hands down, though, the worst thing I said to him that day was I thought his wedding sucked. Although I want to make an addendum. I want to amend something. I never, in any way, shape, or form, disapproved of my brother marrying his wife. I love the two of them. They're great. I mean, I truly do believe they are going to be together forever. The union at that wedding was the most beautiful thing I ever saw at that time. So, naturally, the thought of my brother getting married, I was totally okay with. It's just everything else about the wedding before, during, and after I thought sucked. And some of that really was because of my mom's doing. Because I swear to this day, my mom tried to make that entire wedding about her rather than the bride and groom in question. I mean, it's not that I get why, but I can at least acknowledge what she was trying to come across as. She's worried, one of her babies is getting married, But just my mom's behavior before, during, and after really was nothing short of atrocious. I mean, my God. She would leave, the refrigerator door open for days on end. She wouldn't close the oven door when she was trying to cook food. She would get into a car accident that really even a first-year driver could avoid. It even got to the point where she accused my father of cheating on her. I say this because literally it was I can tell you the exact moment I thought my brother's wedding was going to be terrible. Again, aside from the union, of course. It was a Saturday in March of around 2016. So, 3 months before the wedding happens. Maybe 4. I want to say it was in March. It may have been February. No, it was March. And this is back when I lived with my parents, obviously. I'm sitting in my room, minding my own business, on a Saturday. I'm relaxing, not a care in the world, just sitting in my room. And my mom just barges in and accuses me of shit that, admittedly, yeah, I was doing, but I'm not doing it at that moment. Let's just say it involved, again, the weight issue. My point is, I'm not doing anything now. Honestly, what my mom was doing in that moment was rude and completely uncalled for. And trust me, it wouldn't be the first time she would do it that year either. And when that happened, I knew my mom was going to make this entire wedding about her. And trust me, she did. Because anyone who wasn't my immediate family, and therefore she could pull the wool over their eyes, could see right through her at that wedding. And I could see it because at that point I got fed up with her bullshit. But also, I can't prove this, but I know she's the reason why my brother made me the co-best man. Which, listen, for those of you who don't know, etiquette, because my brother had a co-best man. The other best man was actually my brother's best friend, who made my brother his best man at his wedding about 4 years prior. Now, etiquette really dictates that if someone makes you their best man, you have to make them your best man, to reciprocate. And when you relinquish the person who made you his best man to co-best man for your wedding, I'm sorry, that is definitely a downgrade. I can tell you, I had no business, again, between my mom's behavior and just the stupidity of the fact that I was a co-best man. I shouldn't have been at that wedding, period. Much less being a co-best man. But it happened. Again, I was happy for my brother that day. Again, I love my brother and my sister-in-law. I'm glad they got married. I can tell you for a fact they're going to be together forever. But everything else about that wedding just sucked. Of course, I didn't mention the part about the union, so when I told my brother off on the day of the Super Bowl I mentioned earlier, again, he couldn't take it, so he doesn't want to talk to me forever. About a week before my twin nephews were born, we were able to make amends. And by make amends, I mean my brother was still being kind of a wuss. And I assured him that, I'd be a good uncle, which I have been. I didn't think it would cost me what it cost me though. Because when the pandemic started, because my brother really is the kind of guy who's that petty as well. If I did anything involving, doing anything that was considered wrong, he would have easily used that as an excuse to not let me see my nephews anymore. Which would have included going out during the pandemic. And therefore seeing this one girl I liked for many years. So I wind up choosing my nephews over this girl. It'd be about 3 months until I could see my nephews again when the pandemic started. So it was June 2020 when I finally saw my nephews again. All I needed to do was wait for permission from my brother and my mother to finally go out and see and talk to this girl. But that was never meant to be. This girl wound up finding somebody else. And in January of 2022, she got engaged. And that's when my heartbreak began. And listen, I've been rejected by girls a lot. And, I see plenty of girls that I liked or had feelings for, get married and start a family. And, I felt sad, but this was different. Like, this girl getting engaged was about as bad as I felt back when I contemplated suicide. The difference is I'm at a point in my life where, if I didn't commit suicide then, I'm not going to do it now. And that's the thing I want to emphasize. January of 2009 was when I was supposed to commit suicide. And if I didn't do it then, I'm not going to do it now. So rest assured, I'm not going anywhere. But the fact I actually felt that bad, and I felt that way for almost that entire year. Again, 2022, emotionally, not a good year for me. I mean, there were some successes to be sure. My brother, my nephew's getting baptized, and I later became a godfather. That was great. I wouldn't truly feel better though until late September of 2022, when a neighborhood friend of mine got married, and I was at that wedding. And the moment I truly started feeling better was during the ceremony, when I was surrounded by people that I hadn't seen in years. Seeing this person I've known for many years, get married. That was the first time I ever cried at a wedding. Between my brother's best friend's wedding in 2012 and the wedding I went to, in September of 2022, every wedding I went to was always got progressively worse. Like, there was my cousin's wedding in 2013 where really it's not that the ceremony was bad, but I had to be in a hotel with my mom and dad, and at that point I'm 23 years old. Like, I'm a little old to be being in a hotel room with my mom and dad. My cousin who got married in 2014, what was bad about that wedding is, you have a table dedicated to all of our cousins, but they didn't seat me at that table. Again, I'm 24 years old now, and I'm at the table with my mom and dad. I'm sorry, that just made me feel incredibly left out. There was my brother's wedding. I don't really need to get into that. But easily the worst wedding I went to was my uncle's wedding. And this happened after I came back from getting treatment for my weight issue, because obviously I look like shit. And not to mention, this is my uncle's third marriage to, I'm just going to say it. It's his third marriage. She's my age. And to answer your question, she's blonde. Coupled with the fact that my uncle's a loudmouth, obnoxious asshole, let's just say it. She's a bimbo. No questions about it. Easily the worst wedding I ever went to. So between all those weddings, you finally get to the wedding in September of 2022, and the fact I cried at that wedding made that wedding all the better. Seriously, from that moment on, I came to the realization that if I go to any wedding and I cry at said wedding, the wedding's going to be good. Not to lead the witness or anything. But I had to make sure this was true. And then you get to my cousin's wedding in November later that year, November 2022. No kidding. Because here's the thing, every wedding I've been to up to that point, aside from, my neighborhood friend's wedding, was, family oriented. So the fact that I thought that, my friend's wedding in September of that year was, the best wedding I ever went to. I'm thinking, okay, let's see if lightning strikes more than once. And again, between both of those weddings seriously, those two weddings legit saved 2022 for me. They really did. And honestly, I can't wait to go to whatever wedding comes next. I mean, again, not to lead the witness, if I cry at the wedding's gonna be good, okay? But I don't experience any of that if I commit suicide. So when I tell you that there has been some highs and there's been some lows, I'm being dead serious. Which leads into one thing I definitely forgot to talk about on Wednesday. Because, it leads into, a couple of things. Who am I kidding? I mean, obviously, considering the fact that Rochester got the diagnosis wrong, how horrible the faculty at Horseheads were. My grandmother. I'm sure some of you are probably wondering, has anything been done about any of that? Have you sued or anything? Believe me, if it were up to me, that would have already happened. But I need to emphasize, with Rochester, there's a reason why they're considered an authority on the autism spectrum. Again, it's just a mistake. It's just one case where the best happened to make a mistake, and I just wish it didn't happen to me. In regards to the faculty at Horseheads, I mean, I really do want to believe that they're good people. I really do want to believe that they tried to do their job. And for me to take any of that away from them, and when I say them, I mean the people who actually are good as well, the people who actually spent years, getting the proper education to do what they're able to do, what they love for a living. For me to take that away from them it would make me no better than the very oppressors I sympathized with. And I'll get to that in a minute. In regards to my grandmother, I mean, look, she had dementia. Chances are, whenever I said her, she'd probably forget it. And plus, even if I actually could, seek justice, let's say, it wouldn't be up to me. It'd be up to my mom and dad. I mean, it was my parents who were coerced into believing that I was on the spectrum. It was my parents who were coerced into believing that, I should be in special ed. And it was my parents, well, really my mom, who had to really take what my grandmother said to heart, and so it led to what wound up happening. And I can tell you for a fact it's never going to happen. Honestly, I mean, knowing my father and being the religious man that he is, he'd probably say something along the lines of, oh, that wouldn't be very religious of us to do. It wouldn't be, very Christian of us. And that may be, but I swear he's forgetting about the left hand of God. But that's something totally different, I suppose. And now regarding the time I sympathize with my oppressors. Look, if you actually do have someone who is, if you are on the autism spectrum, or if you know someone who is on the autism spectrum, and you don't know what to do, you're willing to seek advice, or you're willing to seek advice from anyone from anywhere, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the kind of person you want to seek advice from. Again, I sympathize with my oppressors. The fact that I do that means, I completely, was ashamed of that. I mean, I was. I didn't want anyone to know. I mean, I'm trying to live in a world where people forget that I was ever in special ed, or much less be on the spectrum. I want people to forget that. Which means, if anyone's wondering, yes, if I ever got married, I would totally keep this from whoever it was I married. Because, good Lord, no woman should ever be dragged into that. Even if it's clearly not as bad as, one believes it to be. So I'm not really the kind of person you should seek advice from. In fact, again, if anyone wanted to use Wednesday's video as a means to form an argument for why the special education system is complete garbage and why maybe it shouldn't be taken down, I wouldn't necessarily stop them. But please know that's not my overall opinion. In fact, I may not be the person you want to seek advice from, but that doesn't mean I have nothing to offer. And it took me forever to think of anything I could probably offer for anything, really. And then came a stand-up comedy special, believe it or not, from one of my all-time favorite comedians, Ron Funches. Now, Ron Funches actually does have a son who is on the autism spectrum, and, he'll make, jokes about that, but he never jokes about, any of the autism stuff, because, that would get you canceled for sure, for starters. But he says something very profound and something very beautiful that I feel if anyone is looking for any kind of help or advice, that's one thing I can offer. I'll never forget this. It was during his stand-up special called Giggle Fit, where he's talking about how his son is on the spectrum. And he said, if there is someone in your life who is, autistic, congratulations. You've been chosen to take care of a beautiful soul. obviously I never believed I was on the spectrum all those years. I never believed I belonged in special ed. And chances are, if I heard that back in the day, I would have completely disregarded and say, that person's full of garbage. They don't know anything. What's beautiful about this? Deep down, I think I still would have wanted to hear it. I don't think it would have changed anything regarding, my lack of acceptance or anything. But maybe it would have changed something. I don't know. I'm going to be sharing this towards the end of the year, but regarding that one girl I liked for a really long time, who got engaged and then would later get married, I really was convinced I was going to end 2023 just in a complete emotionless haze. Like, I would exist, I'd be present, I would, my nephews are, I have 3 nephews, I'll be there for them, that would, it wouldn't, obviously it's not the love of a beautiful woman, but you know what, that's family is important, I'd exist, I'd be there for them, and you know what, I chose them over this girl, so why not, be around them longer, right? It took a very special group of people that I've come to know that have been nothing short of a rock for me throughout the span of this whole year, especially during these last several months. In fact, you could say it's been the best almost 5 months of my life. I'm sure some of them are watching this, and if you are, you know who you are. And it's been hard, but I think I'm about ready to move on. In fact, I've hinted at this before. There's something I want to do before this year is over, so I can make this the greatest year of my life. And let's just say it involves asking a certain someone a certain question. I can tell you right now, as scared as I am, I couldn't be more confident in doing this task more than I am now. Even if it winds up not being a favorable outcome, I'd be okay with it. Because at the end of the day, I did something I wanted to do. Which leads into one of my very best friends who I mentioned earlier. And this is how supportive he is too. He's so supportive that this person that I want to ask the question to, that this person will say yes. He and I actually have a bet going on where if I ask this person this question and this person winds up saying no, he actually owes me $20. Yes. He actually is willing to pay me $20 because he's so sure that, I'll succeed in this, that he really is willing to make that bet. I never thought I'd ever say this, but I never thought there'd ever be a bet that I'd want to lose. And, believe it or not, well, keep in mind, I actually did see said person I want to ask this question to a couple of days ago. And believe me, when I did, I wanted to, but it wasn't the time nor place to do it. Basically, I was getting myself some lunch, and this person was getting their lunch, to go. So it really wouldn't have been, appropriate to do that. But the point is, I got to talk to this person at least. And it was legit the one thing I needed to do before I did Wednesday's video. Because, listen, this whole week has been an emotional roller coaster for me. I believe the late great Ralphie May once said, if you're going to dance with the devil, you might as well lead. And when I saw this person on Monday, I definitely came with confidence going into, Wednesday and yesterday and now today. So for now, I'm about ready to sort of, temporarily put a hold on the Why I Still Am Here series. At least for a few days. Because I have to do a video about this on the 20th and then the 21st. But again, we'll get to that when we get to that. For now, I will just simply say that obviously I'm glad I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. And I will do the thing I want to do before this year is over. I really think I can make it happen. And I definitely have the support of a lot of people backing me up to give me some confidence. And for that, I thank you, if any of you guys are watching. So naturally, I am beyond humbled that I was able to share this with all of you today. I'm hopeful that you have a wonderful day. It's Friday. I'm actually going to Holiday in the Square. Maybe I'll see some of you guys there. And remember, if any of you guys want to talk or chat, I'm going to be here to listen to whatever you have to say. And like my brothers did before me, I got your back. So take care and make good choices.